Hi everyone, my name is Rabia. I'm a clinical psychologist and today I'm going to be talking about as to how I became a clinical psychologist. So it's a very long story, you have to kind of bear with me for a little bit. So this goes back to the time when I was in my O levels and I was, discovering and planning as to what I want to do ahead in life because I've always been a planner, regardless of whether it's my studies, whether it's my, planning an event, planning my life, planning anything at all. I am like, I start like years back or months back or weeks back, depending on the situation. So I wanted to, right there and then decide as to what I want to do with my career. And I had a word with my father and I told him, I want to become a lawyer. And he asked me one question. He went like, why do you want to become a lawyer? I said, because you're a lawyer and I want to become like you. And he asked me again, he was like, do you think that's a good enough reason to become a lawyer? And that actually got me thinking. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know, why he was asking me this question back then. It really didn't make sense to me, but it actually did get me thinking that, do I really want to be a lawyer just because he is a lawyer? And then I decided, I was like, you know what, I really am interested in science. And so I'll become a doctor. Because, back then it was like science equals to becoming a doctor. And that was decided then, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. So I picked sciences as my subject and I did very well in it. Biology and chemistry were my favorite subjects and science generally was like my favorite. So I did very well in it, but 2 years, O levels done, everything's gone. When I came in A levels, I really questioned whether I wanted to become a doctor or not because I heard scary stories from a lot of people, from my cousin, from, a lot of friends that were in med school already, that you really need to rethink about your decision as to whether you want to become a doctor or not. And that really got me confused and thinking, and I was like, okay, if not that, then I just go for something that's close to science, a subject that's very close to science, because that was just stuck in my head that I just want to do this. So I took psychology, I took sociology, and I took business studies. So what I did was I took a mix of everything so that, if I want to go into the field of psychology, I can do that. If I want to go in the field of sociology, I can do that. If I want to do something related to business, I can do that. I did that. It was good. I got a great grade in psychology. Not going to mention the other ones. And that's when I decided that, I want to do something in sociology or psychology. And psychology was definitely one step ahead of sociology. So I was like, I'm going to go for that. So when I took my admission in my university, I wanted to I was very confused whether what I want to do and how I want to take it. So I took a particular course, which consisted of both psychology and sociology. So I was like, if I want to go towards that, I can do that. If I want to go towards psychology, like very little thought put into it. But when I actually studied both the subjects, I was like, my decision of going for, I always liked psychology more than sociology. So I was like, I'm going to major in it too. I initially wanted to become a forensic psychologist, but when I studied the subject, I was like, maybe that's not my cup of tea. And to be honest, there weren't a lot of options available for criminal psychology, forensic psychology. So I was like, what? I am going to go for something that consists of everything. So for example, I want to do a certain type of psychology which allows me to work into a corporate environment if I want. It would allow me to work in a school, it would allow me to work in a clinic, at a hospital, anywhere whatsoever. So I was like, what? Clinical it is. I will go for clinical psychology. But that wasn't it, trust me. So after I did my bachelor's, I majored in psychology. I took an admission at ICP, which is basically I did my bachelor's from Zabist, and I did my then I took an admission in an Institute of Clinical Psychology, which is affiliated with Karachi University, and I did my specialization course from there. I enrolled myself in clinical psychology. I had a great experience there. I got to, like it was, you basically had to do like a certain clinical hours over there as a part of the course. Because that was required and it was mandatory. So it was amazing in the sense that the course was divided into course hours in the morning, and then later in the evening you had to do clinic. And I got a lot of exposure in terms of the kind of clients I got, in terms of the exposure I got. I got to see a lot of people when it from who were suffering from bipolar, who were suffering from depression and anxiety disorders, addictions, OCD. And you won't believe that my first ever client was suffering from schizophrenia. And that's when I realized, I was like, okay, this is something that's really interesting. This is something that, I was like, I'm proud of myself. I did a great job. After I completed my specialization, I was actually very confused whether I wanted to. I wasn't confused whether I wanted to pursue this. I was just confused as to how to pursue it, because there weren't. When I went out to get a job, I was like, you know what, it's going to be fun. I'm going to find a job like this. It's going to be so easy. But that wasn't it, to be honest. It took. I searched and searched and searched. Nobody was actually willing to take a new graduate and new student, unfortunately. And I was like, you know what, it's going to be a very, very difficult thing to find a job over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that's so I'm not going to go in the clinical field. I'll just go in the organizational field. Like I said, clinical psychology can allow you to actually work in the corporate sector also. So I took that, and most people who I interview, who actually see my LinkedIn profile as well, can see that I have an ample amount of 4 or 5 years of HR corporate experience as well. A year after doing that, though, I realized that, I need to connect to my clinical side as well, because that's something that I've majored in. So I worked for this clinic for 3 years, and they provided me a space. They provided me clients, and I would do therapy, and they would guide me. It was like a good experience I had overall. After that, I had been doing both, juggling between both, doing HR, doing clinical, doing both. And this was before I actually came on social media. So one day I met a friend of mine, and he's a very dear friend of mine. He knows who he is, and if he sees this, he would know who he is. He was facing a very difficult time in his life, and he wouldn't live in Karachi, he would live elsewhere. So he had visited Karachi, and I went with my husband to actually see him. And we were just talking about, career, because he also had he was in that phase to basically establish his own career and stuff. And he asked me, he was like, so what are you doing? And since he was in that difficult phase of life, he was telling me about his experience with his therapist and stuff like that. So he asked me, he was like, why don't you do something related to mental health? And I was like, what do you want me to do? Like, there aren't many opportunities here. I had been looking for purely clinical psychology related job. I couldn't find any, and like there isn't much awareness here. And so he told me, he was like, why don't you do it? Why don't you start it? Because nobody in Pakistan, like it's very it's not a very it's not a subject that's openly discussed or talked upon, or people still feel ashamed to actually address the issue. And he was like, Rabia, why don't you do it? He was like, you've studied it, it was always your passion, you enjoyed it so much, what are you doing here? Like, and that's when it hit me. I was like, that is very true. Why am I waiting for people to create that opportunity for me? Why don't I just do it for myself? And I discussed it with a couple of my friends, my spouse, my family, and they all agreed that it's a great idea. And that's how I started my journey as an influencer, because I wanted people to actually know about mental health, that it exists, it's okay for you to talk about it, and it's actually very essential too. So I think that, I think that was one of the best decisions, because yes, of course, many people won't get it, many people will not understand it. But if I'm creating a difference in even one person's life, or even one person or a couple of people can actually get help from my channel, from what I have to say, I think that's a big accomplishment that I can live by. And I think that is a very, very proud moment for me. So that's my journey into psychology. And obviously there's another reason why I chose psychology, or chose to become a psychologist, is because I always wanted to be a people's person. I'm very curious by nature. I like people, I like helping people, I like giving to people, I like supporting people. I am very empathetic. I like to hear people's stories. I think I'm a good listener. So these are the things that actually got me thinking that, okay, if I actually have all of these traits, I should use them to help people out. And it could actually benefit somebody, and that's going to happen if I actually come in the field of clinical psychology. And when I actually when I was doing my O levels, when I was doing my A levels, even when I was doing my university, my parents never had in their wildest imagination thought that, oh my, our daughter is basically going to become a clinical psychologist. After I graduated from my university, when I did my bachelor's, I told my parents, I told my dad, I was like, I figured it out, I am going for my specialization in clinical psychology. And he told me, please don't do it. He's like, please don't go into this field, because you are overly sensitive, you don't have you're going to take too much off of people, and that does happen sometime. But he said that you're gonna literally bring everybody home and shelter them and support them, and he was like, you're gonna start crying if they cry, please don't do this to yourself. And when I told my mother, she also told me the same thing. She's like, no, please do anything else, please become anything else. He's like, do not become a clinical psychologist. She was like, because it was such a big stigma that nobody would really understand it. But me being me, I was like, no, I have to follow what I like, what my passion is, and that's kind of what he initially taught me, my father. So it's it's on him. And so jokes apart, me being me, I just said no. I'm gonna do this. This is something that I like, and I'm going for it. And I'd actually urge people who are interested in this subject, are interested in this field, they should go for it. Um, a lot of people, because in Pakistan especially, we suffer from lack of good psychiatrists and psychologists. So, like rather than going towards something else, and if something mental health is something that really interests you, take this field, get education, and help other people, because it's very, very necessary.